And the thing with this report is that you don't really get that kind of dramatic, attention-grabbing language from it. It's very considered, it uses very calm language. You also don't get a lot of the details within it, and that's because much of this evidence was heard behind closed doors because of reasons of national security, because of not wanting to aid anyone planning a future attack. But even though so many details are not in there, it methodically pieces together what might have happened. It doesn't overstate the odds, but it does make it clear that if some crucial intelligence had been responded to differently, in a way that seems reasonable, then you'd have a succession of what-ifs that might have led to a very, very different result. The answers are incomplete and yet devastating in their detail, revealing there was a significant missed opportunity, a chance that might have changed things.
All we as families have asked for from day one is the truth, acknowledgement of failures, and a determination to make sure that those failures are fixed, so that next time, because there will be a next time, but hopefully next time there won't be as many families going through the utter heartbreak we have had to endure for the last 5 years, 9 months, 1 week and 1 day.
Despite previous reviews and investigations into the Manchester Arena bombing, the third and final report from the public inquiry reveals failings that were not known before today.
There was a realistic possibility that actionable intelligence could have been obtained which might have led to action preventing the attack. The reasons for this missed opportunity included a failure by the security service, in my view, to act swiftly enough.
I deeply regret that such intelligence was not obtained. Gathering covert intelligence is difficult, but had we managed to seize the slim chance we had, those impacted might not have experienced such appalling loss and trauma. I am profoundly sorry that MI5 did not prevent the attack.
That rare apology from MI5, because despite the careful language and lack of definites in today's findings, it does make clear MI5 had intelligence relevant to what Salman Abedi was planning to do. What followed was not an issue of how the information was interpreted, as we've been told before, but about a delayed response, meaning a chance to have eyes on Salman Abedi when he arrived back from Libya days before the bombing wasn't taken. Libya and the uprising that became years of conflict, the rise of the Islamic State, were crucial factors, according to the findings, because Salman and Hashim Abedi, the brothers who planned the attack together, were there with their father, Ramadan Abedi, who the report says instilled in his sons extremist views and exposed them to training and combat alongside Islamist militias. The report says the risks resulting from the conflict were underestimated, with the counter-terrorism focus on Syria.
You know, we're nearly 6 years along and I've still got further surgery ahead, and I'm in pain every day, physically and mentally. Every day is a challenge.
And a big part of that is the grief.
Yeah, the grief, at some point I've accepted that I'm disabled now. I've accepted the injuries, the limitations on my body now. I'll never accept that Elaine's gone.
That Elaine McIver was a police officer has made the missed chances before the attack and the failings by emergency services in the response all the harder for Paul. They'd been together 3 years. They were buying a house together and planning a life together. They were picking up his daughter from the Ariana Grande concert when the bomb went off. I'm guessing that part of the ordeal is hearing all the stuff, but also being told where the mistakes and the failings were.
There was so many opportunities to stop it happening. You know, it wasn't just on the night. You know, it was months, even years before. And it's hard to hear how he was known. But yeah, you know, he was no criminal mastermind. He was, what hurt is the fact that it was easy for him. And it was all little mistakes. You know, you can't point the finger at one person or one organisation. It was a combination of lots of mistakes and just people not doing their job properly. I remember very early on, I was in that much pain emotionally with the loss of Elaine that I thought, you know, if they could give me a tablet and I could forget about it, I wouldn't be in so much pain. And that upsets me now because her memory is all I have.
22 people were murdered on a Monday night in May 2017. In an attack that had been planned for months and it now seems did leave some kind of intelligence trail. The question, might it have been stopped, doesn't have a simple answer, but it does now seem clear that everything possible was not done to prevent it.
Claire Fallon reporting there. Well, Dr. Samantha Newbury, who leads the Terrorism and Security Department at the University of Salford, joins me now. Thanks very much for joining us this evening. A significant missed opportunity, other failings. This is very damning for MI5, isn't it?
It is, yes, but that's the value of this kind of in-depth, thorough report, is that it identifies lessons which the head of MI5 today has already said he fully intends to implement as fully as possible.
I mean, MI5 failed to act on intelligence, we were told, which might have led them to arresting Abedi 4 days before the attack. It rejected MI5's position that Abedi and his brother had acted alone. Is it your sense that they simply failed to grasp the risk Abedi posed? Or was it carelessness?
The key point in the report is that there was one piece of intelligence, and one piece of intelligence can be the be-all and end-all, that was passed on from one MI5 officer to another slightly too late. So not necessarily carelessness, but perhaps a misjudgment, perhaps a misunderstanding. But the thing with intelligence work is you will get lots and lots, hopefully lots and lots of small pieces, but piecing them all together and seeing the context and the significance is a difficult task for MI5.
And when you get it, you have to act on it swiftly.
Absolutely, yes. Having it is not enough. You need to see the significance and give it to people who can and will act on it as quickly as possible.
I mean, of course, one of the criticisms of MI5 is the lack of transparency. Now, the MI5 chief apologised today. He didn't take any questions. So it's not really very easy for any of us to understand from the inside of MI5 why they think this went so wrong.
The report gives us a lot of information about a lot of things. Part of it has been kept closed for the eyes of people like MI5 only. But at least in the report, it does say in vague terms what is in that, which is something about poor communication channels between MI5 and counter-terrorism policing, who both will be getting relevant pieces of information and should be sharing them with each other promptly and making someone responsible for acting on that intelligence.
I mean, one of the lawyers for some of the bereaved said the organisation, MI5's obsession with secrecy, makes it an unhealthy organisation that shies away from any kind of scrutiny. I mean, do you accept any of that? Do you think any of that is fair?
To a small degree. Their secrecy is necessary for them to do their job properly, to protect everyone, and they help prevent all sorts of attacks in the UK and have done for many, many years effectively. Obviously, when a mistake is made or when there's an opportunity to learn and to improve, that absolutely should be done. The reason why things were kept out of the report, at least that was done, at least it is in the report, even though we can't see it, at least it's there, and MI5 will take action as a result.
It's very hard for the bereaved families not to see that information, I'm imagining.
It is, I imagine it is, and you know, the whole purpose, the main purpose of the report was to give information to them. It is also to learn lessons so that hopefully other similar things can be prevented.
And in terms of that question of scrutiny, I mean, how is MI5 scrutinised?
There's a standing body, a committee of Parliament, the Intelligence and Security Committee, which constantly oversees what MI5 does. They write annual reports, then they write specific reports, including into this attack. They published a report in 2018, which made similar findings to John Saunders' report today.
Long term, how damaging do you think it is for MI5, for its reputation, for its standing?
I don't think it's massively damaging amongst many people. the families, of course, it will damage their reputation in their eyes, and of course that matters. Hopefully,
some have said it's not fit for purpose, which is understandable given what has happened.
Yeah, we have to bear in mind that it's intelligence work is very difficult. You're not ever going to know everything about everyone. That's just not possible, and some things will slip through the net. What's important is that we make an effort to stop that by carrying out these kinds of inquiries and listening very carefully to what the reports have to say.
Dr. Samantha Newby, thanks very much for talking to us this evening. Thank you. Well, the head of counter-terrorism policing for the UK promised to act quickly on the report's findings and insisted officers would work alongside MI5 to be relentless in its work to keep the public safe.
Today's report describes the partnership between MI5 and counter-terrorism policing. That relationship is long-standing. It's seen us work side by side to overcome significant threats to the safety and security of the United Kingdom. I'm sorry that despite that determined partnership, we didn't stop the loss of life nor the injury and trauma that happened close to here nearly 6 years ago.
Well, I'm joined now by Figan Murray, whose son Martin Het was killed in the attack. She campaigned for Martin's Law to help ensure better protection against terrorism in public places. Thanks for coming again this evening. A hard day for the families again.
Yeah, last one, hopefully.
I mean, this idea of a significant missed opportunity to take action which might have prevented the attack, when you heard that was the conclusion, what were your thoughts?
Well, I expected to arrive here this morning hearing more failures and more mistakes, and that's exactly what came true. So, because Volume 2 and Volume 1 were full of mistakes and failings, so it was part of the course, really, that it was the same again with Volume 3.
But it's that idea that it might have been prevented that must have been very hard to hear.
It was, but you know what? It didn't get prevented, and the whole point of inquiries is to find out what went wrong and how to put it right, and nothing will bring our loved ones back, nothing will bring Martin back. So I personally just now feel I need to look forward and carry on working on Martin's Law and on working with school children as well.
I mean, you took a degree in counter-terrorism because of the death of Martin in this attack. How did what you've learned feed into your assessment of what we were told about MI5 today, the mistakes, the lack of communication?
Well, obviously, two things really. I knew nothing about terrorism. I know an awful lot more about it now since my master's, but actually my learning has been that terrorism is a really complex issue. And unfortunately, what I learned also was terrorists are always a step or two ahead of us. So we need to, as countries, as governments globally, catch up with people. And obviously, you know, I feel that since Volume 1 and 2 have been issued, the people I work with at the moment, which are police, counter-terrorism and the security sector as a whole, because of the two previous volumes, people are already making lots and lots of changes, good, positive changes, and hopefully that will continue.
I mean, that idea of learning lessons, information is key, isn't it?
Yes.
And critical bits of the evidence we will never hear, and you as bereaved families will never hear. How do you feel about that? Is that right, do you think?
Yes, it is right, because the word national security is mentioned, and I fully trust Sir John Saunders to continue being as vigorous behind closed doors as he has been with Volumes 1 and 2. He's left no stone unturned. He was so absolutely detailed with his work that I'm sure that he did the same with Volume 3.
I mean, it's interesting that you say trust because it's so critical, but you also make a point that, you know, the words national security are uttered, and there are other families who think that can be cover for just not being transparent.
Well, it could be, but what if it is about national security, you know, so who knows? But I, as I said, I fully trust the chairman of the inquiry that he did the right thing, and he said he can't reveal everything because of national security, and I have faith in that.
I suppose, do you understand how other families do feel perhaps more angry than you? Some saying it's not fit for purpose, MI5.
Well, I don't feel the same way because, you know, as I said, I've worked with people in the security industry and I'm working with police and counter-terrorism. And I know that people in those sectors work very hard and they definitely feel the weight of the inquiry on their shoulders, even if they haven't been personally involved.
I mean, what is clear from the report is the dangers of radicalisation. Now, you go in and talk to young people in schools about that. I just wonder, if you had met Salman Abedi as a young man, what would you like to have said to him?
Do you know what? It's a good question. I go to his school quite often. They invite me back again and again. And I talk to the students there, and I often wonder, had he been there a few years ago and listened to my talk, whether he may have felt differently. I'd love to think he would, but my work with schools carries on because it's important.
And just finally, I suspect there's never drawing a line under the death of a child or a loved one in this sort of atrocity, but is the end of the inquiry a significant moment, do you think, for yourself and the other families?
It's a significant moment, but it's the end. I'm sure the other families feel the same. There is no closure. There is no line we can draw under it. We lost our loved ones. In the case of those who lost our children, it's in the wrong sequence, the death. We should have died before them. So that's a big thing, but it's only the end of a chapter in a long period of grieving, and that's everlasting, really.
Figen Murray, we're grateful, as always, for you talking to us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, the government has promised to carry out all the recommendations put forward by the inquiry and do everything possible to prevent a repeat of such an attack.
Now, I share the sorrow that MI5 have expressed that this wasn't prevented. And I know that all of us are working to make sure that the improvements that need to be made are made. Already more than 100 changes have been done, and no doubt this report will highlight others. The Home Secretary and I support MI5 in making those changes, and we're going to be looking through this report very carefully to make sure that any further changes are done.
Well, Claire Fallon joins me again. Claire, you were at the scene of the attack pretty soon after it happened. Is this now the last word from the authorities on what did happen?
I'd be surprised, because as much as anything, and by the admission of the chair himself, this does raise many more questions. But one thing that he did say today, the chair of this inquiry, was that what shouldn't get lost in all of this was that there were many people who did heroic, amazing things, who absolutely battled to try and save lives. Many of those were people who weren't being paid to be part of the emergency response, but by the same token, there were people within the emergency response who absolutely did their best. But of course, that does not mean that we shouldn't talk about, that we shouldn't know about what went wrong, because otherwise, next time, what happens? And bear in mind, today's report is only looking at one aspect of these failings. We've had other reports talking about problems with the emergency response, with security at the arena. But when our MI5 apologised today, although they didn't spell out exactly what they were apologising for in detail, I think it is of note that with previous inquiries, they've talked about that piece of intelligence not being appreciated as being about terrorism. Today we learned that actually, from the get-go, they did think it was about terrorism. So I think that is one of the questions, why that is what we were told before.
Claire, thanks very much.